Hello. Oh my God, that's so loud. It's too early for that kind of volume. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jarett Wieselman. I'm a senior editor for BuzzFeed. You guys are real nice at 11:45 in the morning, let's be honest. Thank you so much for coming out and watching the first episode of State of Affairs. Did you guys enjoy it? Yeah. Excellent. That is a very enthusiastic reaction. So let's just bring out the cast right now and keep the love going. First up, we have Adam Kaufman. Perfect. And Cliff Chamberlain. Tommy Savas. Sheila Vand. David Harbour. Alfre Woodard. And Katherine Heigl. Ladies and gentlemen, the cast of State of Affairs. Good morning, guys. Thank you so much for being here. The room loved the show. I love the show. Katherine, I'm going to start with you because I know that you had a lot to do with the formation of this show and the creation of this woman. Can you talk to me a little bit about who you wanted to play in A Return to Television?
I think what became sort of the most compelling aspect of it for me was that it's a story we haven't really seen about the CIA. We haven't seen that side of it. And I had sort of been pitched the story by Rodney Farron and Ambassador Hank Crumpton, and they are both ex-CIA. Hank was an operative, and Rodney was the briefer to two presidents. And as they started talking to me more and more and telling me stories, their stories, and the level of sort of honor and patriotism that I don't know, I just kind of thought, God, this would be a great role, and she could be, you know, a real patriot and have all this honor and this integrity and really want to make a big difference in the world, but she could also be very flawed and vulnerable and have these weaknesses, and the two together just felt like kind of juicy and exciting.
What was it about the time in your life where you said, I'm ready to recommit to doing an hour of television? Because it's not easy.
No, and I think you have to just give it up. You know, you can't fight it, so you just have to go with it. And in order to do that, I felt like I'd spent the last 2 years at my home in Utah, and my two little girls, and I got to be kind of the mom I really wanted to be for those couple of years, and then it was like, all right, Mama's got to go back to work. Like, y'all still want these pretty things? And they were a little older, and I felt like, okay, it still sort of breaks my heart a little bit, and it's still hard, but there's an end in sight, and that was sort of the idea behind just doing 13, so that, you know, the commitment, I could be fully there and fully committed and understand that I'm sacrificing a lot of time with my kids and my family, but it's over in 6 months, and then I can go home to Utah, and I can go back to, you know, really having that time with them. And so that was really, for me, the getting to be able to sort of have the good fortune of dictating that was awesome.
The production company you and your mother formed, you guys have worked on films before. This is the first time, I believe, you're working in episodic television. Yeah. How has your role as an actor changed with a weekly series when you're also a producer?
It's been pretty intense, but I've loved every second of it. I actually I have sort of taken to this producing thing, and I kind of I would like to do more producing that I'm not starring in, because I love it. I love how much you have to, all the juggling. It keeps my mind and my heart and my passion active, and I love storytelling, and I've always loved performing. I've always loved being able to tell the story from that perspective, but it's been really fascinating and really exciting to tell it from that other perspective of a producer, like getting involved in what music might help make that moment more powerful, what editing might make that moment make more sense, or I don't know, it's just been kind of wonderful. I'm really excited about it. As the movies, it was like a vanity, no one cared what I had to, they weren't like, it was like your name is up there, but you had absolutely nothing to do with anything except that you showed up and did your work. But they actually, really are really wonderful about collaborating and letting me have something to say.
That's fantastic. Alfre, for you, I mean, I would imagine when you see on paper, president, you're like, yeah, let's go. I'm ready for that. Let's do that. But what was it about President Payton that when you were informed of the role or read the script made you want to become involved?
Because it said president. And I could play that little music in my head. Dun, 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 dun. No, seriously though, I mean, even, who doesn't want to be president, who doesn't want to be the queen, all that kind of things, because it's, no, but when you're little and you're like playing and stuff, it's like, oh, I'm going to be this. Yeah, this is like pre-acting, and then my acting sensibilities took hold, and it was because of the writing, because it was smart, and because I have lived in the world of politics since I was 14, and so I know the world, first marching and chanting and protesting and, making the signs and, by the time I was in my teens, you make the coffee. I grew up in Tulsa, so I was always politically involved. So, you make the coffee and things, and by the time I, went to BU, to Boston, and, took speech for the stage, I said, okay, you read the statement. Yeah, we're here today because of, And so it's just kind of, I've always had this involvement, and it's a world that I love. I'm in most of the time in DC over the past 30 years a lot. So it was one that I could marry something that's very important to me is I think politics is not a rarefied strata. It is actually everyday life. And I think we're as a country, we're starting to understand that it is the grassroots that governs the country. Everybody just has to step up and say something. So I wanted to be involved with that. And also the fact that we didn't even know JSOC as a culture, didn't know that JSOC and all those people existed until they went after bin Laden. Right. So it was like, okay, who makes those decisions? What the hell is that? Okay, we're looking at the film. Who are those guys running in there with night vision? So again, it was a story that hadn't been told. There's a bunch of CIA things around. But this, from the point of view of the analyst, I just thought it would be intriguing to watch. And I try to not do anything I really wouldn't watch.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, Alfre, at this point, I don't think there's an award that exists that you haven't been nominated for, with the exception of maybe a Tony, but we all look forward to your pop album dropping any day now. But I'm curious, when you read a script, what is it about a character that jumps off the page to you and makes you say, this is somebody I need to make time in my life to play?
When you're reading a newspaper or a magazine, just reading, or a novel, when you get a script and you start reading, they said, oh, look at the role of Pearl, and you're reading like, And when you, like by page 5, every time Pearl speaks, something in you goes like this. You start to get emotional. It's organically, you've connected with it. When that happens, I know I'm there already. And so otherwise, if I'm just reading like I'm reading as a bystander, somebody else can do it because I don't feel like there's something I can do. I like to go to work when I think there's something I can think of, I might think of, that somebody else might forget to do. Otherwise, there's plenty of great actors, so I like to see great work as much as try to do it. So it is that organic connection. And again, then you get shocked, go like, oh, they're going, suddenly you hear, well, there's a black woman playing the president. And I was like, oh, that's right, I'm black and I'm a woman. I thought I was just an actor. So I say to Joe, I say, okay, why am I the president? Why did y'all ask me? He goes, because you're effing good. And I said, okay, but America is going to look and say, how did this happen? So it was really intriguing to figure out the timeline. And there is a way that Constance Payton could be number 45. And when you know the politics of it, we did that backstory. I mean, it's all for us, but we got her there. And so, again, anything that involves your whole brain, that you got to think, we love that. You know, we don't want to just sell Doritos. Y'all know that. You want something that makes you go like, oh, wait, I can't figure it out. Okay, let me think. You want to do some homework, and so it was a chance to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that goes for the whole script. I mean, even the line where, you know, it talks about her being a former soldier, you get to know that there are these things about these characters that will unfold over the weeks. And David, I'm curious, because when Alfre talks about not wanting to just play a role that anyone can come in and play.
Yeah.
I mean, we would be here all day if I actually listed every project you've ever been a part of. I mean, it's insanely. What was it
feel
about?
that way, but thank you. You guys are all actors, right? Everybody's a SAG member here, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
SAG-AFTRA, baby.
Awesome. Is that one union?
Right, one union,
is AFTRA still around?
One union.
I started in soap operas as the world turns. We used to be AFTRA. It was like a totally different contract too, right?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
That is correct.
I go to my union meetings, as you could tell.
You know, when Alfre talks about these not being perfunctory roles and these having more sort of depth to them, what was it about this character that spoke to you?
I mean, to be honest, the reason why I started, it's hard to make a living as an actor. I think everybody knows this, right? Unless you're a big star. So I've done a lot of work, you know, and I consider myself somewhat successful in this business, I think, as everybody knows, and it's so damn hard to, like, you know, make any money. So one of the reasons why, you know, I accepted this job was to make money, like to make a living as an actor. I mean, I think we all get very, you know, I can only say this to a room full of actors, you know. When I go on David Letterman, I'll say all these foofy things about the role and like how important it is to me. But I'm just not at that stage in my career where I can pick and choose a lot, you know what I mean? I mean, that being said, there's a certain little bit of a degree of choice that I have, and I will say that, but I will say it's exciting to be offered a lot of money to play a role. I mean, that doesn't happen a lot in my career. It has not happened. I've done big movies, like what I consider big fucking movies with like Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet. You're third on the call sheet and you're getting paid nothing. Like, it's ridiculous, I think, this business. And I think that's one of the problems with our union now, is that we have to start looking at that, like that the new model has become in our business. It's not so much in television, but the new model in films is that you pay number one on the call sheet $12 million, and then you pay number two scale. And I think that's like a real issue. Not in this, but in my, you know. No, oh, well, fuck. Am I getting scale? I haven't seen the checks yet. But that being said, that you know, it's nice to make a living in this business. That being said, Joe Carnahan was very an attractive part of this process for me. Like, he's the show kind of runner, show creator. It was created with a couple different people, but Joe did a film called The Gray a couple years ago where it was Liam Neeson versus a bunch of wolves, which is...
The wolves got paid nothing.
What? The wolves didn't stand a chance. He tapes
wolves
like
union
glass
really
in his
sucks.
hands at the end. He tells someone how to die. It's amazing. But he's a really good filmmaker, you know. And then, I mean, to be honest, like, I took it, and I also took it because my girlfriend said that I should do it, which I actually listened to her a lot on. She really loved the pilot, and she was like, you should do this. So I did it. And I will say that, you know, coming in, my reasons were not the best in terms of, like, you know, money and my girlfriend telling me to do it. But having got here to do it, I will say that it has been one of the best experiences I've had in television, just because of the collaboration of all the people and because the people involved are so cool. Like, I've been on a lot of different shows, and you get a lot of different tenors on sets, you know. And even shows which are critically acclaimed, like the tenor on the set and the collaboration might not be there. And I will say that for this, like, people do really, as you say, like, people really listen, and they really let the best idea make the show better, as opposed to their own egos being invested in what they have to do. And that's a rare thing to find in such a high-profile network TV show. And so I've been really taken with how good that's been.
One of the things that for me really stood out about the pilot, and Sheila, I'm going to ask you, because the thing that immediately I was struck by was the camaraderie between everyone on your team on the show. There's so many shows where there's a workplace environment going on where you're like, these people would never hang out in a million years because I don't buy them as coworkers or friends. I instantly bought the four of you and Adam coming in as coworkers. Sheila, what was sort of the early stages of that sort of group like? I mean, were there bonding exercises or activities?
Oh yeah, we bonded. I mean, first of all, I would want to first give a shout out to our casting directors because I think that they really put a stellar team together that did have this incredible organic chemistry. We shot the pilot in New York. I think that kind of helped. We were all staying in the same hotel and you kind of feel like you're on spring break together. So you're like, woo, spring break. But I love these guys. We talk about this all the time. Like, it's just crazy that it's not every cast that you get to be part of where you just click and geek out over all of the same things. These guys won't leave me alone we have a text message thread that didn't stop since the pilot began. But it is a really special thing. I think one of the things that excited me most about the project was like what Katie was saying, the complexity of these characters and the unsung heroes that are really operating behind the scenes in our country that we never hear about, what they put themselves through and the sacrifices they make on a personal level to do what they do. And what that does is I think it brings them together because you can't really talk about what you do at work with people outside of work. And so you do create a special dynamic with your coworkers. And it's just great that we naturally had that. Some of our favorite parts are riffing and improvising on set. And thankfully, Joe Carnahan is a big supporter of us doing that. Every time he lets us off the leash, we kind of have the most fun. And a lot of that stuff ended up in the pilot. So it's cool. You know, you do that sometimes as an actor and you're like, that'll never get in there. And a lot of it's there. So I'm glad to see that people are catching on to that dynamic. And I just think you guys are so great.
Do you remember what the question was?
No, I don't. What was it?
You've totally gone off.
Well, no, but I mean, perhaps you guys could also speak to it. I mean, the way there's
a lot of love over here.
We got this, Sheila. Don't worry about it.
But there's an
Is it gonna be
inability to
Tommy
sort
next?
of actively create chemistry. On some level, it has to exist, but a camaraderie and a group familiarity, I think, can be sort of created. What was important to you guys in New York, if it's legal for you to talk about what happened?
It's legal. I think it's legal now in New York, right?
In New York it is.
Yeah, it is. No, one of the cool things, too, there you go, about that scene was that was actually the last scene we shot of the pilot, the one when Lucas comes in the vault. So we had about almost 2 weeks to get to know each other leading up to that. And Joe did that on purpose. He wanted us to build those friendships before we did it, and I think that it really showed.
I think, too, not only were we in New York shooting, at one point we also went out to one of the suburbs of New York. And
Pearl River, New York.
In Pearl River, New York, where we stayed at a smaller hotel just for a couple nights with nothing. There was nothing out there to do, and the four of us just wound up getting dinner a couple nights in a row, taking a taxi to another random suburb. And I mean, there's just nothing that.
Top on Z Brute.
What was it? Yeah. So there's nothing like time, I think, time with nothing else to do and just getting to know each other. So we spent a lot of hours talking. And then there was another really cool thing that Katie had this summer where some of us were able to go out to Utah for a couple days just to reconvene and re-meet up before we shot the pilot, which I just think was an unbelievably classy move to kind of get us all there because we hadn't seen each other in months.
Yeah, it was like a 5-month break between us starting the series and filming the pilot.
So we stayed out there for a couple days, and I mean, there was one of those nights, like sort of like a summer camp night, where the four of us were up till like 3 a.m, literally just looking at the stars, talking
really
about
cute.
nothing. And so
So
I don't know,
embarrassing, Cliff. Jeez.
What? I love that stuff. I don't care. I'll let anybody know. Talking about hopes and dreams and looking at stars. So anyways, it meant a lot to me.
I think Alfre is very hurt she was not invited to this. This is so true.
Too big for us.
All of you grown folks in the audience, they don't know the trenches we have been in.
But then she like had us all over for dinner, and we were like, we gotta be fucking classy, like be classy.
Oh yeah.
We're going to Alfre's for dinner. It was the most
Unclassy,
unclassy
yeah.
we've ever behaved.
Yeah.
Like she's photos that like no one will ever see.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Next
She
year,
makes some
Alfre's
mean
coming
oysters,
so
though, I'll
she's
tell you that.
partying with us.
Also, let me say this. I know these guys are just really, they're all open, they're brilliant, they are wide open as actors, and they are generous to each other as actors. But I think the other thing that, because we've all been in casts where, you know, people can be great, but there's always some little glitch, there's a chemistry off on one person, whatever, and you work around it because basically all the time you're at sea you're out at sea together, and you gotta bring out the best in everybody to get back to shore. But I think one common thing about all of us at all the different levels that we are is that we're all really grateful for this. And I think with that gratitude, it tempers the show. Our crew is the same way. It's just a bunch of people who feel grateful.
Obviously, on some level, you know, what's on the page is what we're getting on screen, but these people are based on some level on actual members of the CIA and, you know, theoretical heads of state and what have you. Adam, what was important for you in terms of research? I mean, did you feel the need, like what was available to you guys when you guys were prepping for this?
Well, I had it pretty easy because my job as the director of the CIA's briefer, one of our executive producers, consultant, Rodney, had that job. So I had my open book right there. I could just go to him anytime and ask him anything. Outside of that, there was a lot of Wikipedia. Literally. We were asked to improv some stuff, and I don't really have a Rolodex in my brain of, you know, CIA things that I can just pull out. But no, once we got picked up and we knew we were going to go into production, there were a few books that were suggested, and I read them. Tommy did not.
Yes, plenty of.
I got the cliff notes from you. I didn't need to read
You
it.
did. Right. Cliff and I read the books.
Yeah, and then you briefed him on them. It's perfect. It worked out so well.
They did their jobs.
Yeah. Which is what we do every day.
What about you, Katherine? I mean, in the formation of this, I would imagine there were a lot of meetings with people who've held this job and to make sure it was factual. I mean, factual accuracy has to be paramount to you guys in making this television show.
Yeah, it was certainly important because two of our producers are, you know, I wanted to honor them, and they wanted this to be as grounded in reality as possible. We've had to have like a few conversations since we started this process 3 years ago. So since then, it's evolved, and it is still, you know, dramatic television. Mm-hmm. So it's not a documentary. So we've had to take some liberties, but so far they've been really pleased with how kind of on point we stay, and that we don't stray too far into like craziness. And you know, I think they too are feeling a little like they wanted this show to portray the noble side of the CIA, because they're kind of the first to get picked on in entertainment and in film and television, and I wanted to do that for them and for all of them that have served us. So I just talk, like Adam, I just talk constantly to Rodney. Just ask him, I send emails. A lot of it is how to pronounce things. I mean, that's been a real dilemma.
I mean, I would imagine Dr. Speak on Grays would prepare you for crazy words.
You would think it has not at all. I could do that way easier. It was way easier for me to remember. I don't know why, because because it'll be like a paragraph that makes no sense instead of just one word in that paragraph. It's a whole paragraph that I have no idea what I'm saying. It's been difficult.
I love it. We had asked for questions from our audience, and the first one, I guess, could really be for Katherine or Alfre or David. What differences do you notice about television today as opposed to when you started working in television?
Well, you know, it's interesting because it's kind of, it might be coming back around. It used to be that the writing and the real scripts were on film, but that's when film, the whole film would cost $30 million. And so there were characters, there were stories, you know, back in the 70s. That's when all the ones that we think are so great, that's when they were made. Those films wouldn't get made now. And television, back when I started, it was the heyday of the sitcom. And I couldn't get arrested to get on a sitcom. They just wouldn't hear me. But then there were people like Brandon Tartikoff was the head of NBC. But on television, the networks, there used to be people at the top who were sort of visionary. They may not be the creative people, but they would let the creative people have reign. They knew to let Bochco go. They knew to let Bruce Paltrow and them have their reign. You could put a show on, and it could get its footing and go. Now, what happened as the corporations started to be at the top and make decisions, as opposed to individuals that had balls and vision, then they started to second guess. And if you didn't hit a stride they thought, they snatched the show after 3, and they started to use the term, it's too smart. It's too smart. As if we're not required to go to school in this country. And so they second guessed the American public. So anyway, it went into this thing where they were always guessing, okay, who's watching this hour? Let's put this demographic. Okay, put some this in there because these kind of people like this. And it just became that. So, but what happened was as my generation started to age and women getting kicked off the screen at 40, then there are all these really wonderful trained actors who were out of the film business, and cable pops up at the same time. So they started to compete, and they said to the writers, come write what you want. We'll keep our hands out of your business. And so that became a place, cable, that you would go to do that work, the work we all came to town to do in the first place that we dreamed about. Well, the networks, it has taken them a while, but they've come around to say, okay, just because we're free and everybody can watch us and don't have to pay to watch us, we still have a sense of pride, and we want to get into this game. And so slowly, they're putting their people like Greenblatt. I'm going to give him a shout out, and I don't have to, but they're, they get nervous, but they say, okay, come on, no, we want to do this, we want to do this. So it's coming back around, but television, besides being paid, television is the place where you get to do more of the work that you want to do, that you're trained to do.
And it's also the place, television is really the only medium where you get to live with a character in a way you don't on film or on stage to some degree. Adam, I'm curious, there's a difference between an actor who does, your responsibility as an actor when you come in as a day player or a guest star in a series versus when you are that character over a long period of time. Is there a shift you have to do as an actor when you're coming in for a guest starring role versus this is me for 13 episodes?
Well, I guess that depends on what the character is that you're playing. I was actually just talking about this last night, but for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but certainly in television and doing something over a long period of time, the most important thing to me is to, if you're a guest star, sometimes you'll get cast in a part, obviously because of the way you look, and you feel like I shouldn't have even gotten the job. I've actually gotten jobs before to reoccur for a long period of time where I had 3 auditions one day. I didn't even look at that audition. I had no idea what would walk in and just read the lines off the page, got cast, and because I was like, I don't want to get that job. That's not the one I want to do. Because it's just so, it was like either I'd done it a million times, it just wasn't interesting for me, and then I end up getting the job, and it's based purely on a look. But the most important thing for me at that point is I'm not going to try, and I get it, like they've written this dialogue, they've written a character that they want played a certain way, that for me personally, I know my limitations, and I say to myself, I can't give them exactly what they want, but I can give them me being that character. And hopefully that works. At least it won't come off as me trying to do lines a certain way. Do you know? It's a little wordy, it's a little heady. I wish I had a better explanation.
No, it makes sense, and I think the audition process is something that gets talked about a lot on this stage, for good or for bad. For you, David, what are your feelings about the audition process? Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's the greatest thing ever. I'm sure we all know that. No, it's, I mean, I love that I'm sort of coming to a stage where I am able to be in an offer range. Like, this was an offer. I didn't have to audition for this, thank God. Because I am not very good at auditioning, I guess. I mean, I'm okay, but most of the stuff I've gotten has been, like, where I'll be invited to do, like, I just did this movie, Walk Among the Tombstones. And I was invited to do a read-through in a hotel with 6 other actors and Liam to see if he wanted to do the movie. And the director really sort of took to me in this relaxed setting. And I know that had I auditioned for that part, had I gone into a casting director, I wouldn't have been right for it. I wouldn't have been evil enough, or, there were all these things that would have prevented me from that. So, I sort of hate the audition process. And it feels like the further I go in this business, the more I see that creative people tend to gravitate around creative people. And I think people want to work with the best people. And a lot of the jobs that I've sort of come by has been, you start to, like, I feel like jobs come out of not just auditioning, but jobs come out of who you are on set, how creative you are, how you talk to different people. And it's not about going to the party. It's more about, just being a guy or a girl who has great ideas, who comes in prepared, who comes in, like, when you do have the job. And the other aspect of it that's been good career-wise is just, like, continuing to work. Like, that's been the thing where everybody, even I, get really choosy and stuff like that. And sometimes I'm just like, just work. Like, just work. And work begets work. And it's just sort of a thing. In terms of the actual process of auditioning, though, I think it's a horrible, horrible thing. I mean, I really do. And I think the way it's set up is so nerve-wracking and so full of tension. And, I mean, the best auditions I've had, though, is where you go in and you just, you just say, like, fuck it. Like, and you just do exactly what you want to do with the role. And I mean, they say this in books and shit. I remember reading this, but it's like that thing where it's like, for that 5 minutes, you have the role. So, like, play the role, like, you have the role. I mean, when I get in my head about, like, do they like me, and do you like when I do this, and, like, as opposed to, like, I mean, I guess what I found about acting in general, I'm going to go on here for a while. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to stop soon. But what I do find about acting that's really cool is I was on set, like, doing this series Manhattan. I'm just going to give it my whole career. Thank you. And I remember, like, being on set doing this scene and being, like, thinking, like, doing this, like, thing, and I was like, is that good? Like, is that good? Like, I was like, am I good? Like, do people think I'm good? And then I was like, when are you're almost fucking 40. Like, when, my IMDb page is wrong, by the way, it's 75. When are you going to get to a place in your life when it's like the job that you actually have fun with, as opposed to the job that you're worried about what people think, or if people think you're good? When is the job where you're like, you know what, this is fucking fun. Like, I get to just fucking play this. And finally, I think on that job, I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm just going to have fun playing this, as opposed to thinking whether I'm good and stuff. And that's really, like, served me in the past, 2.5 weeks since I've come to that realization.
Tommy, for you, has there been sort of a piece of advice you've gotten or given yourself about the auditioning process that has helped make it more palatable for you?
Ugh. Oh, I hate it so much, too. But I guess the main thing is that I consider something successful for me is, there's cause and there's effect, right? There's being effect of somebody, or there's being cause over somebody, right? And for me, it's when you go into that room, it's putting yourself in the position where you're the one in control and you're the one who's being cause, and you're not being effect of the casting directors, not being effect of the producers. You put yourself in a position where you're the one controlling the room, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, that's been my most successful thing that I've done in that process. But I'm still a nervous wreck every single audition. There's no way around that, I think. Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting about the show, and Alfre, while you say, an African-American female president is not sort of the defining characteristic of who she is, there is a really interesting sort of female element to the show across the board. I mean, the tagline for the show is, all the president's men are nothing compared to her. And I think... And I think that's, I like sort of where the emotionality of that comes from within the show. The relationship, I think, between your two characters is really interesting. What was it when you were sort of forming the show that you wanted there to be this element happening in their world?
Okay, so I didn't have anything to do with the formation of the, I came on board. And I think, again, I think it's in the people you choose to bring onto something. I can be the president, and Katie can be my top analyst, my briefer, because we're capable of that. I mean, our characters are, and we can play those things. And I warned the writers of this right off. I said, I should not read anything that smacks of, I am a woman president. It's like, there's no doctresses or pilotresses either. And just because we haven't seen that, it's the job, it's the office. Me being a grown woman, whatever I'm doing, you will feel the weight of a woman there. And whatever Charleston is doing. So what we bring to it is our lives as women in the world. I mean, I think most people, if you think about it, and this is not take anything away from men, but men are the face of power in our culture. But women hold this culture up. We are the thinkers and the doers. And it's just, so it's so interesting that, when we come to the screen portraying characters, they'll say, oh, she's a strong woman. Well, you know what? Strong is not anything you can activate unless you're playing, a weightlifter. So all you have to do is be a grounded person, and the natural energy is there. It's the same way it is with any of these guys. They don't have to bring a brightness of mind, a freshness to it. They don't have to add that to their acting task. They just have to be honest because that's who they are. And then you do the acting work. And the acting work isn't playing a concept. And so I think people that don't act, whether they're writers that aren't really great writers or that aren't exceptional writers or directors that aren't exceptional directors, they might ask that of you sometime, or you might get a line that every time you talk, somehow you got to mention that you're a Latino person and you're feeling spicy when your friggin' job is to be the head of the CIA. You have to find a way to not hurt people's feelings, but say, you know what? How about this? Watch me do this. You're gonna feel my spice, but let's not talk about it.
Right.
So I think it is in just getting people that have the same approach to work and understanding of where work comes from.
Katherine, as an artist, what was it about what Alfre is talking about that made you excited to put that on screen?
I think, because when Rodney and Hank started talking about it, I said, well, Rodney, why don't you want a man in this role? I mean, like, it's you, it's your story. And he was like, no, I really want it to be a woman. And I thought that was really interesting. And then I said, well, has it ever been? And he said, yeah, there have been 2 female briefers to the president. And I went, all right, so I want to know what made that work. Like, and it was really important to me as we were writing and pitching and doing the outline and all this stuff that Charleston not become man-like to be in a powerful position. Do you know what I mean? I wanted her to be there because she had a certain skill set and certain instincts and a certain mind that made her the best at this job because she's a woman. You know, I didn't want to be like, okay, I'll go in and wear like black suits and I'll wear a tie and I'll try to act like a man and be like ruthless like a man and smart like a man. And they kind of kept going that way, and I was like, stop, because what will make this more interesting and more believable and more grounded is if she's there simply because her unique skill set is totally tied into being a woman. And I also, in saying that, didn't want her to be, using her feminine wiles to get ahead either. It was, or her looks or her figure or her this. It just had to be completely from this woman's soul. Like, this is what she was made to do because of a million different reasons. She had the mind for it. She has a history in it. She has great instincts and a great gut. And I think a lot of being an analyst in the CIA requires having, some pretty good instincts, because there's so much information that they're having to sift through, and sometimes all you have is your gut to go on. And so I felt the same, because originally we had talked about, like way back in the outline phase, that it would be a man president, and that Charleston would have daddy issues, and that he would be like a father figure to her. And I was like, okay, well, we're gonna make that, it might get complicated though, right? Like, how are we gonna make that like something that we haven't already seen 1,000 times? And then Joe came on and did a whole like new pass and a new take on the pilot script, and he said, what if it's a woman? And I said, fuck yeah, that's cool. Like, that's super cool. And then to me, it was about, okay, Alfre Woodard is incredibly talented, and that would up the game on this show so much. It would give it a legitimacy and a weight and like, we're serious people. We have like serious actors in this. It's not just me. It's not me like running around.
Did you
an
see
idiot.
Beauty Shop?
Beauty Shop. Seriously, it was still mind-blowing. But then it's shifted into, okay, now it's two women in power. How do we, we're not trying to make a meal out of it, but we are saying something.
Yeah.
And I love what Alfre said. I love that we're not playing to that all the time. It's unspoken. It's just there, And the unique relationship between these women, because they're women, because they're maybe a little more sensitive and they can get emotionally attached and vulnerable with each other in a way that two men maybe don't as easily do, has given it like all these little, great, aside from these two, they're very emotionally attached. It's weird. But it just gives us all these little paths and avenues to go down in performance and in storytelling that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Well, I mean, it just, it makes me think, though, that as a woman in this industry, I mean, obviously there's been, this kinds of stories you're talking about where it seems very done, as the show was in its initial incarnation, must be something that actors encounter all the time in this industry, that things are very simplified into this, she has daddy issues, and so she's a dirty girl. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, but it seems so sort of not what women are. I mean, how important is it to you, with the show or with the work you do through your production company, to put forth the kinds of representations that you feel are more accurate?
It's hugely important to me. And we were just talking about this, David and I, and talking about the kind of movies that I just don't ever respond to and I don't like. Because, yeah, they're all his favorites. He's got a really weird brain. You're right. But I won't name them. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But it's just, for me, it's not about the performances not being brilliant or wonderful and the story being compelling. It's that I have this overwhelming need all the time to be inspired in some way, or to be lifted up, or to watch something and go, oh my God, they're talking about me. They're talking about my life. They're talking about the struggles I've been through, or the choices I've made, or the mistakes, or whatever, and I feel not so alone, And so for me, playing a strong woman on television, or being in a power position as a woman, and having a heart, and having compassion and empathy, and having flaws and weaknesses and making mistakes, it's kind of like I want to speak to my daughters, I want to speak to my girlfriends, I want to emulate my mother, who I'm very attached to, obviously. But, I think she's an incredibly strong and powerful woman in the best of all ways, who has suffered a multitude of things in her life and never lost a sense of joy or gratitude to be alive. And that's the kind of woman I want to portray. And I know that makes my sort of acting box a little smaller. If I don't really want to play a mass murderer, and I don't really want to play a child abuser or an animal abuser, or some of those walks of life that can be very incredibly interesting acting opportunities. But I don't know, I'm a little bit of like, I like rainbows and butterflies and cupcakes and things that make me happy. You know, I don't know.
I love that. Well, unfortunately, we're nearing the end of our time, so I'm going to wrap up with a question for everyone, and I will go through, and I will start with you, Adam, so everyone else prepare your answers. Victor asks, what would you have done if you were not an actor?
I was actually drafted out of high school to play professional baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby.
Fourth round, St. Louis Cardinals. So.
No big deal.
Well, I guess I couldn't go back and do that, but I would have chosen that. That certainly was my dream.
Why is our softball team so bad then?
Yeah.
Not because of me. But that would have been it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cliff, what about you?
My mom was a teacher and taught in for students who and still teaches actually for students who were kicked out of high school and have had a troubled time. So she was inspiring. So I probably would have gone into teaching.
Tom?
Cliff stole my answer. Thanks, Cliff. No, my wife is a teacher, and every now and then I go to the school and I help her out, and that's something I've fallen in love with. And I love kids, and for sure, I'd want to be a teacher as well. Absolutely.
I love it. Sheila?
I make some of my own artwork, so I think I would just full-time be an artist. I can't imagine doing something outside of the creative arts. So I'd probably have stuck down that path of making my own work if it wasn't working out in the acting realm.
I have no discipline, but if I did, I would be a neuroscientist. I love the brain, and I love mental illness. I mean, the epidemic that is like, I find it fascinating, mental, and also like, you know, I read all these like armchair science books like Ramachandran and Oliver Sacks and these dudes who talk about like all the different things that the brain does that I think is fascinating. But I failed organic chemistry, so.
I would be a human rights worker. I hope that didn't sound like a pageant answer.
World peace.
No, I actually have no marketable skills except acting. So, and I do a lot of human rights work, so I could just do it full time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it. Kathy?
I would have married a really wealthy man and been a trophy wife.
Nailed it.
No, I'm just kidding. I would love to own a knitting store. I would love to run a bed and breakfast. I would have loved to have worked with elephants in Africa, and I would have really liked to have been a teacher. I would have really liked to go into politics, and so it just made more sense to do the acting thing.
Because you get to do all those things as an actor.
Exactly.
Right.
I love that. Well, guys, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being with us today. Thank you all for coming out.